Hello and welcome back. Just about 3 months ago I made a video about the AK24 stating that it was the best overall weapon in Battlefield 2042. Since then there has been a lot of water under a bridge and I don't know, I don't really think that expression works that way in the English. Anyway, today everyone is talking about the BSV, and before that it was the shotgun, and before that it was the GBT and the M5 and the K30. Well, the list just goes on. But what about the AK? Did we just forget it? Did DICE just forget it? Is it useless, or why does no one use it anymore? This video is probably going to be a bit shorter than the ones that I normally do when I focus on a specific weapon, or I think so at least. I mean, I have already done one where I look at real life, so there's no point in doing that again. It should be shorter, should be less content. But hey Zach, why do another video about the same weapon? What will that ever contribute to life? There are 3 months of reasons. And not just time, but 3 months of patching and balancing from DICE. This video will focus about where the AK is today, what setup you should do today, or maybe the advice to just dump the weapon, don't use it. Hang around and I'll tell you. But first, a gentle reminder to throw in thumbs if you like the clip, or maybe even consider subscribing so you won't miss more like it. As I remember, the previous video was made during patch 3.3. That means that there have been at least 4 bigger patches since that video, and I'm not going to bore you with all the details, but I just had to double back to see what changed since. Well, to be honest, there hasn't been much going on specifically for the AK24. It was kind of nerfed in 4.1 since the semi-auto firing mode was removed, but on the other hand, that change didn't really work, and the burst mode got increased fire rate. Unfortunately, in 1.1, they realized that the removal of semi-auto didn't work, so they actually removed single rate of fire. This was a bummer, but we'll get back to that later on. Then there have been some fixes around the anti-material runs and master key, which, well, no one uses. Finally, and this is a bit interesting, 1.1 fixes recoil management for some attachments that didn't work. I say it's a bit interesting because when I started to revisit the AK just days before 1.1, I didn't get the result I expected from testing different attachments. I also could put it into single fire mode, so well. So all in all, there hasn't been a lot of fiddling around with the AK, or at least not in the public nodes. Comparing the AK with other weapons in Battlefield 2042, it surely doesn't reach my top 5 list in Season 1. I made this video about the top 5 weapons, look in your top right corner now I think it is, and you have a link to click to it. What about the rest? Well, it's of course hard to compare an assault rifle with a sniper rifle, and since AKs are rather all-round, it's hard to compare directly to the M5A3 as well. With so many good weapons for specific situations, and the BSV that without doubt is the best all-round weapon right now, it's hard to really motivate using the AK. At least for starters. It's a weapon that I really appreciated and one that I really want to like, but when I first got back to it, it really felt a bit too weak. Even with high power rounds, it still feels like you need to hit with 1 bullet too many to kill. The fire rate feels a little bit too slow with that low damage output, and the recoil feels just a bit too much with that low fire rate and damage output. With, for instance, M5A3, you can make it into a really good weapon despite fairly low damage output per bullet by increasing the fire rate a lot. That possibility isn't there for the AK. Within 10 meters, you still need to hit 4 bullets to kill your targets, or 2 bullets in the head. Up to 50 meters, you need to hit 5 bullets or 3 in the head. More than 50 meters means 6 bullets or 3 in the head. With weapons like BSV, it's really hard to motivate this, but there are upsides. It just took some time to find them. While the SCAR and the AC42 are drawing towards the DMRs and the M5 is drawing towards the SMGs, the AK is nowhere near any of them. Instead, it's actually drawing towards the LMGs. You have a very large magazine. Using the drum mag, you can carry 50 bullets. It's easy to get going from the start and can carry a decent amount of ammo around all the time. With the correct setup, you can manage recoil and spread really well, so basically, you have a light version of the PKP and the LCMG. Once I realized this, I swiftly settled with a setup that immediately was comfortable and efficient, and I also slightly adjusted my playstyle towards situations where I benefit from prolonged periods of fire. Essentially, that means that I need to be more thorough with corners and covers, as I can't rely on neither fire rate or damage per bullet to save sticky situations. As with most full auto weapons, the tactical compensator and the BCG light grip is the way to go. The tactical compensator buffs the weapon accuracy for neglectable loss of recoil control, and the BCG light grip buffs recoil control while adds for a neglectable loss of hipfire accuracy. This of course means that I, very much as with the LMGs, want to use adds as much as possible, and no, if you end up on your belly all the time when playing LMGs or any other weapon for that matter, actually ever when playing Battlefield 2042, you're doing it wrong. As we normally want to keep enemies within 75 meters for efficiently, I suggest using a low zoom sight with good visibility. I used the Fusion Hollow myself. Before I really picked what to bring, I fiddled a bit back and forth, which is furthermore tempting because DICE rewards kills over 125 meters with some wacky sight. But well, that is not very efficient using the AK, so do so at your own peril. Finally, the drum mag is generally the way to go. Lots of bullets for prolonged moments of fire. Should you run out of bullets, which can happen I suppose, I bring the high power extended mag. It's actually really good as well, but don't walk into the trap of thinking that you're more efficient at longer range. I really want to point out the biggest problem with using the AK at range, because it's easy to think that, oh, this should work. It really is because of the bummer I mentioned earlier in the video. Right now the AK has two firing modes, either full auto or burst. Burst is, unlike many other weapons, not really bursty. I mean, it means that the AK fires two bullets slowly with lots of recoil. Much like burst modes for other weapons and for most other games, the recoil is predictable, which means that you can compensate for it with mouse movements. But for me, it's too aggressive to be worth it, and two bullets fired at a very slow pace is yet another reason to just avoid it. The other problem, however, comes with full auto. I'm not really sure if this is by intention or it's just the game that still responds slowly in general, but you really need to nurse the shots to not accidentally fire additional rounds or even pretty much end up in a sustained fire. Just a short click often results in more than one bullet fired, and you really need to pause for a long time to get that break to rest the recoil. This effectively prevents long-range shooting with the AK unless you are aiming for wounded targets. Given that the chance is that the target spots you in response with 3 quick bullets from a BSV or a well-directed explosive bow arrow or recoilless or simply beams you with an M5 or, well, the list goes on. It's simply not viable. Instead, set it up and play as mentioned before and you will have a good time. With that out of the air, I think it's time to call this video. I've already kept yabbing for much longer than I thought, so well, cheers!